Australia, the oldest, most extreme continent on Earth. Nowhere else do you find snakes more venomous, wildlife more bizarre. Over tens of thousands of years, people have adapted to this untamed land. They have endured its extremes and gradually learned to love it. From the rich jungle to the red desert to the snowy mountains. But in this vast island of wild beauty, the crowning jewels are Australia's national parks. It's winter in the Australian Alps, and the cold fronts roll in from the Great Southern Ocean to spread a soft blanket of white over an old snow gum. This gnarled and twisted veteran has survived more than 300 alpine winters. It's the hardiest of all eucalypts, and it thrives in icy conditions at high altitude. They grow slowly and never much over 30 metres. But they carry a heavy burden, which they shed by bending their branches to dump the freezing load. It's one of a few evergreen trees that survives in the snow and ice of the Australian Alps. Near Mount Kosciuszko, Australia's highest mountain, the winter temperature can fall to minus 20 degrees Celsius with a savage wind chill. It's a harsh endurance test for both plants and animals. While some animals go into semi-hibernation, the marsupial wombat is active throughout the winter. This usually nocturnal animal is foraging during the day because of the shortage of food. The relentless winter evenings can be just a little too cold. Deep snow cover makes it hard for him to find food. But today is perfect winter wombat weather. Sun shining on his thick fur, snow blanketing his underground burrow, and a thaw that exposes bare patches and running water. Wombats are strong animals. They dig tunnels with their sharp claws, which make excellent crampons, and can scrape away the icy crust to find food. The Snowy Mountains, as they are called, are the highest part of the Great Dividing Range, which stretches 3,500 kilometres along the entire east coast of the continent, from tropical North Queensland to Victoria. It is the third longest mountain range in the world. Only this one small section, however, has high mountains and winter snow. These ancient craggy peaks are a big attraction for skiers. It's not as steep as the European Alps, but it's wide and perfect for cross-country skiing in the wilderness. Once much more high and mighty, ice and time have ground these ancient mountains down. The Snowy Mountains are home to thousands of wild horses, originally brought here by European farmer settlers. In the Australian Alps, they're affectionately known as brumbies. It was this high country that gave birth to the legend of the man from Snowy River. The rugged mountain men and the wild horses that they chased inspired Banjo Paterson's iconic bush ballad. Generations of Australians have since been raised on this tale of outback courage. It's part of the national folklore.
So Clancy rode to wheel them. He was racing on the wing, where the best and boldest riders take their place. And he raced his stock horse past them, and he made the ranges ring with the stock whip as he met them face to face. Then he halted for a moment while he swung the dreaded lash. But they saw their well-loved mountain full in view, and they charged beneath the stock whip with a sharp and sudden dash, and off into the mountain scrub they flew.
The stockman's history on these mountains is merely a blink in time for the Alps. Their geological history goes back more than 600 million years, making them far older than the European Alps and the Himalayas. By the end of September, the snow melts and the rivers flow, providing water for the first green shoots of spring. The echidna comes out of his winter torpor. For animals and farmers alike, grazing begins in earnest. A number of people around the national park still earn their living with the brumbies. Glenn Simmons is the classic Aussie bushman. Like the Snowy Mountains where he lives, he's open, tough and weathered. Glenn, nicknamed Simo, loves the brumbies.
What? That's just what they're used to coming to. You know, when they're not in sight, they come when they hear that noise. Yeah. But the two over the back are brumbies, right? Genuine, untouched. I mean, how beautiful is it to see brumbies at your doorstep? You know, it doesn't get much better than that, does it?
Simo's property is adjacent to the park. He used to catch wild horses on behalf of the National Park Service. He'd be on the road for weeks at a time, building traps and luring the horses with salt licks. He brought many of the brumbies home to break in and sell. Simo and his wife Julie still have to make a living. So now they've worked out a way to persuade the brumbies to come to them. Life in the bush is not always easy, especially in winter. But their isolation has proved how much they rely on each other.
Julie actually, you know, even with the fresh brumbies, because she feeds them on the bike all the time, they get used to the noise of the bike, they get used to Julie's voice, and they come around quite quick. Really, I think it's the female thing. The horses seem to love the female attention, they really do. And as far as that little mare's concerned, Julie just feeds her and brushes her and plays with her, and she thinks, oh, this is all right. But whereas when Glenn comes, there's a bit more action, you know.
Simo thrives on domesticating the legendary horses of the Kosciuszko National Park. The rugged terrain and its challenging climate means only the fittest and strongest animals survive. In Simo's opinion, a lame wild horse needs no doctoring. Just regular running exercise will soon see it right.
I like them because of their temperament. You know, their temperament is always so gentle, and, you know, they might act like they're wild first up, but once they're really caught and broke in, they become very quiet.
Simo and Julie run a website where people can find brumbies for sale. Some of these hardy specimens are especially suitable for children to ride.
He hasn't done too bad, you know.
He's done great. He hasn't done anything wrong. Not yet. She's the type that we break in for kids, but, you know, that takes 18 months, 2 years to get them guaranteed quite enough for kids. As much as they become friendly quick, you know, it's teaching them all the things that kids will do. Walk up behind them, want to give them carrots and bread, and really sort of teach them just to be kid-friendly. I just want to adjust that down so it's not too tight in his mouth to start with. It's way too tight.
Tell him how good a horse he is.
Oh, you're a good horse. Little champion. I'll call you Toffee. Sweetest Toffee. Good boy. Shed.
He and Julie live simply in the bush. They have a generator for electricity, bottled gas, and a water pond right at the front door. In remote rural Australia, most people live like this.
Got a coffee made.
Yeah, love one.
They've raised their 3 children here, and 2 of them have families of their own now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sure they'll take it.
That'd be good.
Well, that's a Brumbie that just comes into the salt. He's just wandering around on his own. He's just a young Brumbie stallion. Hasn't got a mob. So he's just a bachelor at the moment. So he'll eventually get older and get a few mares and get his own family.
The Australian Alps National Parks are made up of 11 nature reserves that cover the only high alpine habitat on this vast continent. But the endemic plants have not evolved to cope with the hard hooves of introduced grazing animals such as horses and cattle. The Brumbie population in the alpine national parks is said to be unsustainable at well over 15,000 and growing at 20% a year. Brumbies' hooves damage the sensitive mountain terrain. The results are severe erosion and the destruction of rare plant habitats. The treeless slopes of Mount Kosciuszko are particularly vulnerable, with only a thin and fragile soil cover. In 2003, the Parks Administration was forced to intervene. Brumbies were shot from helicopters. But public protest soon put a stop to this drastic form of population control. Rangers now trap 300 wild horses a year. They erect temporary pens and bait them with salt licks, hay and molasses. When the horses enter the pen to tug on the straw bales, the latch trips, shutting the gate behind them. When the alpine pastures are free of ice and snow again, the eastern grey kangaroos return to graze. They can grow to be almost 2 metres tall and live in large mobs in the most inaccessible parts of the park. They raise their joeys in the pouch for 9 months. The big males can weigh up to 90 kilos. These magnificent animals can jump up to 6 metres in a single bound and travel at more than 50 kilometres an hour. And they have enough endurance to travel for hours. Amphibians also emerge in spring. Found only in the Alps, the rare corroboree frog is named for its markings, which resemble Aboriginal body painting. But unlike most frogs, it doesn't jump, and it doesn't swim. Sadly, the exceptional corroboree frog is on Australia's most endangered list. The blossoms on the snow gums are sought after for their nectar. Many birds also return to the mountain forest when spring arrives, to feed on the bush flowers and insects. The sulphur-crested cockatoo is a large and versatile parrot, common throughout eastern Australia. The beautiful gang cockatoo, however, is not so adaptable. Its numbers are in drastic decline. New Holland honeyeaters arrive for the spring flower nectar. It gets noisy in the bush when the lyrebird does his spring mating dance. This almost flightless bird is one of the most remarkable creatures in southeastern Australia. He not only has his metre-long tail feathers to impress the ladies, but also his extraordinary voice. Lyrebirds can mimic just about any other bird in the bush. They can pass this mimicry down through the generations. In modern times, lyrebirds have been known to impersonate car alarms, chainsaws, and even mobile phones. These high alpine boulder fields, snow-covered in winter, are the habitat of the extremely rare mountain pygmy-possum. Linda Broom has studied these shy animals for nearly 40 years. Until a few decades ago, they were thought to be extinct. But 2 small populations were then found surviving in the Alps. And recently, Linda found a third one. She noticed that this rock formation was similar to their other known habitats. She also noted the presence of bogong moths. the tiny marsupial's favourite food. Linda and her assistant put out traps, padded with soft material and baited with walnuts.
Possums like to be under the shelter of rocks, where the bogong moths are. The bogong moths accumulate in these areas, so we put the traps in a little space where the possums are running through the boulders at night, and they come upon the trap. And the walnuts actually taste and smell a bit like bogong moths, which is why we use walnuts. So we put those in the traps and put the little trap down a hole where the possums might be running, looking for moths. And we hope they go into the trap.
The probability of discovering even more of the rare marsupials in this location increase when she also finds their favourite food plant.
This is mountain plum pine. It grows on the rocks. It's actually a pine tree, and it has little green seeds. So what the possum does is hold the seed in the corner of its mouth and cut the seed across the middle. But a bush rat will hold the seed in both hands on each side of its mouth and use its front teeth to cut the seed lengthwise. So you can tell if you pick up the seed husks from the ground whether a possum's eaten it or a bush rat's eaten it.
Bogong moths are attracted to lights at night. Linda installs a trap to try and find the size of the moth population in this spot. Linda is one of only a few scientists who have closely studied this rare marsupial possum. Her work has had one or two surprising turns.
I used to tell my students and volunteers they taste like walnuts, and they said, "How do you know?" And I hadn't actually tried them, so then I had to live up to my words and taste them. We did a cook-up that night, and we made a stir-fry of bogong moths, and they do taste like walnuts, very oily. But I pulled the wings off, I couldn't eat the wings.
Some friends of Linda's have a farm and horses near the park. Linda takes every opportunity she can to get out into the countryside. She always learns something that helps with her scientific observations.
It is lovely to see wild horses galloping across the mountains. You see a brumbie, a feral horse, rearing up a little stallion and being very proud and striking at the air, and it does tug at the heartstrings. So, in a way, there's a small place for it, but we do need to keep it in areas that are not going to be damaged. There are areas in the subalpine, and there's also areas outside the park that we can have horses in as well, and some of the state forests. So there is a place for it, but it needs to be controlled very carefully so that we're not damaging the native environment with these horses.
During the brief alpine summer, these montane grasslands become a glorious carpet of rare wildflowers. Many of these delicate species grow nowhere else on Earth. The summer heat also produces violent thunderstorms in the mountains. Flash floods cause streams to rise quickly. Remote areas can be cut off for days from the outside world. The four-wheel drive is an essential vehicle in the wilderness, where biologist Ken Green does his all-weather explorations of the park.
This is more like the weather I'd expect in April, but having said that, I've been doing this now regularly for the past 15 years, and I think this would have to be the wettest February that I've ever done it for. So usually I'm complaining because it's too hot, too dry, there's too many snakes, too dusty, the animals are getting stressed in the traps because of the heat, whereas today it's, yeah, you get that on big jobs.
Ken set his traps in the bush 2 days ago. The animal he's looking for is a marsupial rat.
This one's a broad-toothed rat. I've just checked it. It's an adult by the looks of it. And so I'm just going to get it into the bag. Being a rodent, they can give you a bit of a bite. And come on, matey. No, go the other way. Dan's not behaving.
Due to Ken's work, the broad-toothed rat is one of the most closely studied rodents in Australia. Fossil evidence indicates that this animal originally lived throughout the whole eastern half of the continent, although it prefers cold winters and wet summers. This suggests that the climate in this notoriously hot country was once very different.
And I've now got the animal in a grip where it can't actually bite me. Now this is a female. Now she's behaving herself quite nicely. With the drying and the warming of the continent, these animals have become restricted to basically fairly, the cold, wet sites. So this is the ideal conditions for them. And they're slow, fairly gentle animals. They get eaten by foxes, and things are getting warmer and drier, so they're definitely under threat. Now she wants to go, and she's off.
Ken's yield is unusually poor. It seems that the weather is too wet, even for the broad-toothed rats. But he still has to check his 40 traps every 2 days. The animals can't survive in them any longer than that. He finds a surprise guest, a female marsupial mouse. The males, by this time, have all died of exhaustion after the rigours of the mating season.
With this weather, there's probably not as many as I would have expected. With the rain and the wind, they probably all stayed in bed overnight, which is probably what I should have done as well. Yeah.
The Australian Alps date back to the time of the breakup of the supercontinent Gondwana. It divided into Australia, South America, India, Africa, and Antarctica. An enormous volcanic magma bubble raised the Earth's crust to form a giant plateau, which then collapsed in the middle. One part sank into the sea, but one edge of the escarpment was preserved as the east coast of Australia. After breakup, the Gondwana continental landmasses then ground together, causing further violent uplift. But that jagged new mountain chain has since been sculpted by wind, water and ice over a geological age. The Aborigines inhabited the valleys along the riverbeds. Every summer the tribes met on the high peaks to feast on the bogong moths. They drove the insects from the caves with smoke, then turned them into protein-rich flat breads that sustained them for months. Among the rounded granite boulders of the mountains, this miniature kangaroo feels right at home. Yellowfoot rock wallabies can jump up to 4 metres and were once hunted for their beautiful fur. Today, they are at the mercy of introduced foxes and feral cats. In the Australian Alpine region, they live in small scattered groups of up to 20 animals. The strongest males vie for mating rights. They are notable for spectacular aerial combat, which alternates between play and deadly earnest. But if you lose, there's plenty of time to contemplate a new strategy. A warm, early summer evening. But at night, it's still cold. In the pure mountain air, the stars blaze with a special intensity. The melting snow brings plenty of water to the meadows. The lush wild grasses provide a feast for wombats. These are the most serene of all marsupials. They would seem an easy target for predators. Their rear is protected by thick hide and fur, but their claws are deadly for frontal attack. The alpine pastures are good grazing for horses too. But few wild brumbies are lucky enough to fall into Simo's gentle hands. He's just finished training a new bunch of horses, and now it's time to find them homes. A mother brings an eager young rider to meet his new pony.
How are you?
Good.
Good.
Glenn, Carol and Jaden.
Hi, how you going?
Kel, Jaden,
Glenn.
how are you? This is Goliath.
Hey, Goliath.
A nice little pony, isn't he? Reckon you could ride him?
Yep.
You could. We better put a saddle on him well and see if you can.
9-year-old Jaden is already a keen horseman. Now he's about to ride his very own Kosciuszko Brumbie for the first time.
I'll get you on, and then I'll get on that other little mare, but she's only been rode a couple of times, so you'll just have to watch her a bit.
Yep.
Ready? Go. Sit. Ready. Rein. All right, you just have a little ride round on him, see how you get along with him, and I'll get my one ready. All right, you feel good?
Yep.
Take your time with him. Do you get the feel? Rightio, you right to go?
Yep.
All right. Just keep up something for you, lad. Like a little log.
These are the moments Simo lives for. He loves to pass on his philosophy of life to the next generation.
All right.
His passion for mutual coexistence between man and nature in this big wild land is embodied for him in a relationship with the Brumbie. The pygmy-possum is the only marsupial that stores food for the winter. Although these tiny animals were once widespread, they are now restricted to a few high alpine locations. Yet another casualty of habitat destruction and feral foxes and cats. Linda Broom and her colleague set their traps 2 days ago.
So we should have walked the other side.
She's hoping to find some today in a new location.
It's number 15. Possum. Looks like a bigger one too.
This tiny marsupial looks at first sight like a rodent. It's the only mammal to live all year round above 1,400 metres altitude.
It's an icon of the Alps because it's the only animal that's restricted to above the snow line in Australia. It's very specialised. It feeds on the bogong moths, which migrate here during the summertime and leave for the winter. And also the mountain plum pines that you can see growing around us are also restricted to these rocky areas, so it's like a unique little ecosystem that's the possum and the bogong moths and the plum pines.
The pygmy possum's life is adapted to the short alpine summer. The female produces a litter of 6. They leave their mother's pouch after 2 months. Then the offspring are on their own, with only a few more weeks before the start of winter.
Well, the biggest problem, of course, is climate change and what's happening with the declining snow cover, because these animals need the snow. When the possums hibernate, they drop their body temperature from 37 degrees down to 2 degrees when they're hibernating, and the environment under the snow stays at about 2 degrees as long as you've got about a metre of snow. But when you start losing that snow, it can get to temperatures here at Charlotte Pass down to -20. Making a little...
Linda notes that the animals are getting thinner year by year.
Slightly lighter, that's 45, so it'll be 26 grams.
Pygmy possums no longer have enough to eat when they wake up hungry from their winter semi-hibernation. With less snow and shorter winters, the snow melts before the bogongs reach the mountains. So the possums are dying of malnutrition. Bogong moths could be described as the most important species of the entire alpine region. The fat, protein-rich insects migrate every spring from the hot lowlands to the mountains for their cool summer refuge. The birds and the animals of the Alps and the local Aboriginal people all sought out their hiding places for a guaranteed source of nutritious food. Park biologist Ken Green spends both summers and winters in the mountains. He knows the whole region better than anyone.
Well, basically, once you come sort of out of the Himalayas, coming south, there's really not much until you get to New Zealand in terms of mountains that support snow. So I think that's the main thing about these mountains is, so suddenly in the lowest, flattest, driest continent on Earth, you have plants and animals that have to be able to adapt to snow.
Ken climbs a steep hill above Dead Horse Gap. He never knows what treasures he might find up here. With many rocky crevices, this is typical habitat for bogong moths. A striking arrangement of jagged rocks catches his attention. He discovers a hole just big enough for him to crawl through.
I just have this thing where I tend to crawl into holes. If I see a hole in rocks, I tend to crawl in and see what's there. So this was just one of those many cases. There were bogong moth remains outside, so that was a good hint that there was something inside. So it's a bit of a squeeze, but went in, took a look, and there was probably 100,000 or so moths lined up in front of me. Yeah.
Bogong moths generally shun daylight. They spend their days resting under large, cool rocks before swarming outside at night. But what Ken discovers in this cave surpasses all his expectations. Bogong moths cover every inch of the cave interior. They've obviously been migrating to this cool secret place for centuries.
Why they come to particular caves, we don't really know. Obviously they come back, or at least some moths come back to the same caves, because on the floor of the cave here where I'm lying, there are a number of parasites which remain in the cave. So they're dependent on the moths coming each year. So certainly some moths come back in each year, whether they're moths from the same areas or whether they're just generally moths from all over. Got a moth down there. We don't know, and this year's a particularly good one.
The bogong moths are enormously important to the ecological balance of the entire alpine region.
The basic is, when do they arrive? That's the key to a lot of what's happening here in the mountains. And so each year I record the earliest date of arrival, and then I come up here to look at them just to see roughly what sort of numbers we've got. It's very hard to be exact because these are the easily accessible ones, which means they're the ones that are first eaten by the foxes or the ravens.
A significant problem is that the moths bring farming pesticides from the lowlands in their bodies. As the most concentrated source of protein in the Alps, the moths spread these poisons to almost every level of the food chain. Ken Green has been tracking this disturbing development for years. The Australian Alps National Parks protect the only high alpine habitat on the continent. The many large rocks offer good hiding places and protection from the cold for animals and insects. Bushfires in the more remote regions turn evergreen forests into desolate fields of grey sticks. Fire has been one of nature's cyclic events in this habitat for millions of years. In contrast, the wild brumbie herds have only been here for less than 200 years. For many Australians, these horses have a significant cultural heritage value. The brumbie is related to the 136,000 horses that were sent to the Great War on behalf of Australia. Only one of those horses came back. Those horses that went to war never came back. But the horses that were left in reserve in Australia were set free, and some became the brumbies. Some people argue that brumbies deserve the same level of recognition and protection that native marsupials, birds and insects receive. The wild horses, therefore, have become a political issue. The trapping program may be more acceptable to the general public than mass shootings from helicopters. But an annual reduction of only 300 brumbies, whether they become pets or pet food, is only a fraction of the yearly increase in the size of the overall population. But for Simo, alpine brumbies are the best horses in the world. With time and patience, they become docile riding animals. Simo could not be happier with his life.
And why would you not want to live on the edge of a national park? I mean, it's got so much to offer, especially Kosci. I mean, it's such beautiful mountains, beautiful terrain, you know, all the rivers. I've thought about it, but I don't want to be anywhere else. Why would I want to be, you know? No, I don't want to be anywhere else. I travel a bit and I see a lot. But no, my little part of the world's pretty unique in this little corner. So yeah, I've got it pretty good. Probably another month or so.
From now on, the nights will grow steadily cooler. And then the first frosts and snow will come. In the only part of Australia that can really be called alpine. The problem of the brumbies, however, will keep the National Park authorities busy for a long time to come. Most people doubt that it can ever really be solved.